Welcome everyone to another episode of Facility Management Marketing Podcast. I'm your host Javier. So this next episode, we'll be diving into webinars. And so this is something that I have been, I love webinars. I love attending webinars. I love hosting webinars. I love everything about webinars. And webinars were big 2 years ago when the pandemic hit. And they are still big today. They work very well. They may not be as popular as they probably were 8 years ago, 6 years ago when I started learning more about webinars. But in general, webinars are just a really great opportunity to speak to the masses. Okay, so in sales, there's like a one to many approach. There's a one-to-one approach, which is your normal one-to-one sales, which is what most of you that are here will be actually doing is doing a one-to-one approach on your sales process. There's a one-to-few approach where you're probably selling to like a few people all at once. It could be like at a conference and you're kind of doing a demo or something like that. You see this done on a lot of SaaS platforms where you're kind of doing a demo about something and showing some stuff. And, where I'm coming from is that there's all different ways on how you can demonstrate stuff. And webinars are basically, a seminar, but it's done, with like a Zoom or whatever. And so I'm not going to go in too deep into like every little aspect about a webinar, but there's this concept that I follow that's called the perfect webinar. And so I'm going to kind of teach it to you on like how I understand it and how I've used it. And then, you could also, access it yourself. You can just look it up and buy the course. It's relatively inexpensive. But, with that, like I've learned how to do webinars over the years and I'm still trying to get better at them. And so I'm always trying to improve. And there's just certain frameworks and formats that you want to kind of follow when you're doing your webinar. So this is just kind of like a little 4 key framework on how to do a facility management webinar. And keep in mind that like this can be tailored to you. And if you're like, well, I'm different. Yes, I know you're different, but like everyone's business is different, okay? And I took this concept and applied it towards B2B companies that were in the service space. And then I took the same concept and then applied it towards B2B companies that are actual like service providers, okay? And so I'll be taking this concept and doing the same thing and continuously, tweaking it and working with it. I've done it for franchises. I've done it in different ways and it can be done. It's just how you model it. And these webinars, they can be 5 minutes long and they can be 55 minutes long. It doesn't really matter. What matters is that the content is actually good. So with that, what I want to do is I want to explain the 4 key steps that you need to have in your webinar. So the first one is that you need to have some sort of story. So you need to show that to show the value of what you're teaching. You need to tell a story. You need to tell like a backstory about how you learned it or how you earned it. And this is kind of what I mean is like this webinar, I learned it and earned it 2 different ways. I learned it first by reading a book called Expert Secrets. And then from there, I invested some money on essentially having something designed for me for a webinar kind of design process where this guy would create like a landing page for me. And from there, I filled out some information and was able to map out like a very high level webinar design. So, and it was great. And then what I did from there is I started like watching other people do this same webinar, but for their product or services. And I started kind of writing notes and tweaking it. And I'm like, okay, I get this kind of makes sense. And then from there, I ended up buying a course that taught me how to use this, whole concept and why it's important to do this and why you should be doing that and this, that, and the other. So like where I'm coming from is that when you're designing, when you're trying to sell something, you've got to show the value behind what it is. You can't just teach something and be like, I just know this. Because if you don't show the value by telling the story on how you learned it or earned it, then the other people are not going to value it either. And this is what I mean, because if you learned it, it took time. I can say it took me eight years to learn how to do the perfect webinar, and I'm still trying to get better at it, or maybe 6 years, I don't know. And I also paid a lot of money to learn it. And if I taught it to you in say 30 minutes, you'd be like, man, that would be awesome, because I don't have to either spend thousands of dollars and 8 years to learn how to do this. I can learn it from you in 30 minutes. You see what's going on now? Now you're like, I'm really interested. So you got to have some sort of story that tells you on how you learned it or earned it. Number two, you need to help them buy into the mission by introducing a strategy of the framework. So what you don't want to do is, like, this is like the what, okay? What you don't want to do is you want to essentially like give them a framework of how like this works. So you don't give them everything, okay? Like essentially like what you're going to do is you're going to eliminate like how to do that, like how to do all the like the really intricate stuff and how to implement everything. But what you're going to do is you're going to kind of say, hey, this is the framework. You need this framework to do this so that you're successful to do this. And so when you lay out the framework and how it's done, then all of a sudden people are like, oh, that makes sense. If you think about this, my entire podcast is all frameworks. I teach in frameworks, okay? Whenever we do things in our company as a marketing organization, I lay things out in frameworks. Like, this is how we're going to do this, and then we're going to do this, and then we're going to do this, and then we're going to do this. And it just kind of keeps rolling that way, right? Step number 3 is you got to walk through everything they need to do to achieve the success with your framework. So you're not going to show them all the tactics, but you're going to kind of show them like, and so you need this piece, and you need this piece, and you need this piece to make this all work together, okay? And so you're just going to kind of show them like the ropes. Like, I've done this with like, hey, this is how you start a podcast. You need this, 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 and this, and this. And it's very simple. Like, hey, this is how you do a webinar. You need this, 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 and this, okay? And so the reason you do this, and you don't go too much into teaching, okay, because this is where you're going to lose them, is that then they're going to get caught up on like all these other things. So you're just going to say like, you need these, simple ingredients. It's like, it's no different from watching like those cooking shows where you're like, you need salt, you need pepper, you need cumin, you need some paprika, you need this, and you don't know how much to put of everything. You just know like the overall like, so I need all those things, and you need Worcestershire sauce, and you need this, and you need ketchup, and you need mustard, and you need white vinegar. And then you're like, and that's how you make it? And then when you go in and you try to do it, you're like, oh, this is a lot harder than I thought. That's kind of what you're doing, okay? Whenever you're teaching, whenever you're doing a webinar or even a seminar, all right? And then step number 4 is you need to share case studies about how others have used this same framework to achieve the same transformation or results that changed. All right. And so case studies are going to really help you make things move forward. So like, if you're like, hey, this has worked, let me give you like 2 examples. I did this for my company, as doing this, this, and this is what it transformed. And I did this for another company and did this, and this is how it transformed them. Okay. When you do that and you give case studies and examples, people are like, oh, that makes sense. And so, whenever you're kind of laying the structure out on your webinar framework, what you want to do is you want to I'm looking at my notes here. There's like, different stories that you want to tell throughout this, okay? And so, I'm laying this out. So the framework that I just gave you is just 4 simple steps. And within that framework, these are like some of the the macro tactical things that you want to do, okay? And so I'm going to kind of give you guys the foundation of this is how it's going to look like. So, you know how I told you that you get to tell a story and how you learned it or earned it so that people see the value. When you go into storytelling, you want to tell like an origin story. All right. And this is basically your chance to share your journey from where where you started to where you are right now, and how this new opportunity that you're going to be showing them is really changed. Is going to really change their lives. Like, you basically say like, hey, I was doing this, this, and this. And so I know exactly what you were struggling with, because most, facility companies or most, people that are, yeah, it's still recording. There was a delay. So if there's a delay on this for you, it's probably because there was a delay on my computer. I'm not sure what happened. Anyways, where I'm coming from is that what you're trying to achieve, make sure that my mouse is disconnected. That's why. Okay, so what you're trying to achieve is you're trying to create some sort of relationship. You're trying to have them be like, oh, I get it. I can relate to you. I understand you. That makes a lot of sense. And so you're trying to kind of like tell them like, hey, this is where I came from and I get it. Like, I mean, a great example is you know, I'm a CU Buffs guy. I went to University of Colorado. We just hired Deion Sanders as our new head coach. He used to be the head coach of Jackson State, which is HBCU school, and it basically, excuse me, basically, you know, his story is that he turned this school, Jackson State, into like a powerhouse in his division, his conference, to win the SWAC, and then he went now into like the Pac-12 to be the head coach of the University of Colorado, and so he's got a cool story on how he got there and all this other stuff and et cetera, et cetera. And where I'm coming from is like, you need to have an origin story. All right. So that's very important. Now, I told you that you need to be teaching in stories as well, too. Everything that you should be doing should be in stories. Like, you should be having stories within stories. I just told you one right now. All right. So the next story that you're going to use, this is going to be like, this framework is that there's 3 things in order to achieve success. All right. And so what you want to do is like, you're going to teach in this framework, you're going to teach them, hey, I know that you struggle with these 3 things. You're going to have like an internal belief of what, you know, the challenge is. You're going to have an external belief of what the challenge is. You're going to have also like a belief of like what you would like, you know, to achieve, and all that stuff. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to break all of these beliefs that you have, and I'm going to tell you how I was able to break them by doing this, this, and this. And so you use stories and then frameworks and examples and case studies to build off of each one. So like the first one is like, you're going to tell like a vehicle story. And so this vehicle story is like, it's just basically a story showing on how using this vehicle of your new opportunity led you to the outcome they desire. All right. So an example is this, you know, like as you know, when I, on the marketing side, okay, let me step back a little bit. The reason I'm successful on helping like facility and property management companies is because I basically have proven the concept to several other companies inside the industry and outside the industry. Okay. And so the vehicle that I use is like, hey, listen, I know that you guys have tried to do this, this, and this. You've tried to run ads, so you've tried to do this, and you're trying to understand digital marketing, and there's not a marketing department within your organization. You have a very heavy operations and sales team and all this other stuff, and you don't have a marketing team. I get all that. And so this is how I was able to overcome all those things without having all those resources. And this is the vehicle I used. And the vehicle was like SEO and, paid search. And then, and that's kind of what I'm saying, right? So what you're doing is that this story that you're telling is essentially going to start kind of saying like, hey, like, I know that you may have tried all these other things, but and quite frankly, like, you failing at those things, it's not your fault. Don't worry about it. It's not your fault. But like, you basically chose the wrong vehicle to try to achieve success in marketing. And I'm going to help you fix that by using this new vehicle. And this is the new opportunity that you'll be getting. And the reason you want to talk about a new opportunity is that you don't want to sell another mousetrap. What you're trying to do is you're basically saying like, hey, it's okay that you didn't succeed. This new opportunity lets the other person be like, hey, this is cool. I can actually step away and cut my losses, and it's okay. It's not my fault. And they feel more comfortable, if you will. Does that make sense? That's what you're trying to do when you're presenting the vehicle part of this story of this new opportunity, okay? So now that we understand, that you have an origin story, okay, like, and then you've got your vehicle story, and then you've got this internal belief story. This is the third story that you'll be teaching or talking about. And so in this internal belief story is really important because everyone has their own internal beliefs. So like, it might work for you, but it's not going to work for me because I'm in a different industry. That's their internal belief. Or it might work for you, but it's not going to work for me because I go after bigger customers that have X amount of, properties or something like that. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, they have internal beliefs on why it's not going to be successful for them. Oh, sorry. I'm trying to drink some water. Hold on a second. I've been sick for the past couple weeks, and I got a dry throat because I'm talking a lot. And so in this story, you're explaining how you broke through all these false beliefs about yourself in order to attain the goal of your new opportunity. And so you could have different, it could be like, well, the reason you succeed is because you've been doing this a lot longer. Like, I've heard people say that to me, like, well, the reason you're really good at this, Javier, is because you've been marketing for 15 years. Well, actually, I've been marketing for 18 years, but who's counting? And really, it's not. That's not why. It's because I did this, this, and this, and so I explained those things. Does that kind of make sense? And so the whole purpose of this, what you're trying to do, is you're trying to essentially acknowledge, where their false belief is, and then you're trying to break it and then you break it with stories, a framework, and case study, an example. So you say, hey, I went through this, and then I created this framework and helped me achieve this. And basically, I no longer had to suffer this, 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 and this, which is what you guys all went through as well too, because we're trying to figure the same thing out. And this is what the results were. And then I didn't know if this was actually going to work all the time. So then I tried it for 3 other companies, and it actually did this, this, and this. And these are the results as well too. Crazy. And then all of a sudden, on that internal belief, all of a sudden that person's like, crap, everything they say is true, so therefore I have to believe it. Does that make sense? So let me go back to the very beginning of this. You got to tell your origin story, your background, where you came from, your humble beginnings, if you will, so that they can relate to you. Okay? This is very critical. You don't talk about you talk about your humble beginnings. And I use this a lot, my humble beginnings of I had a company, and this was my company in a storefront, and I was going out of business almost every day. And, I didn't build this, big conglomerate business, but after learning how to get better at marketing, I started doing this, and this is the results, and all this other stuff. And people are like, I know those days, I can relate to that. And then I realized I was going through these problems. And the reason I was going through these problems is because I was choosing the wrong, path on how to achieve that. And so I realized that there had to be another path. And so I started learning more about this stuff by following Russell Brunson and Gary Vee and all these other things. And then started investing all this money. And then I realized that this is the path to achieve success on getting more customers through marketing. And then I had these, beliefs about, well, it works for them, but it's not going to work for me because I'm in a bigger town, or I'm in a smaller town compared to them. You see what's going on? And you keep doing this, all right? And then you get your fourth and final story, which is going to be your external belief story. And so this story is going to help them understand how you, or a client or customer, was able to see through a false belief about some external barrier to success by using your new opportunity. And so, it could be well, we're in a recession, and it's really hard to grow a business in a recession. Well, I actually grew a business in a recession and grew bigger during a recession than I did outside of a recession. Weird. Okay. Or people can say well, COVID, affected me. Well, here's 3 other companies that actually had COVID hit them at the same as you, but they made these tweaks by doing this, this, and this. Okay. So what you're doing is that essentially you're telling a story to relate to them on this external belief. You're acknowledging that, hey, it's okay that you struggle with this because we all went through this. And then this is the framework that I created to help you not have to face this external belief. Okay. And you don't say that. You don't say this false beliefs or whatever. You don't tell them that. You just kind of say hey, this is what I had to do to help me kind of break through this problem that I was going through, and it worked. And then the order to see if it would work again, I did it for 2 or 3 other companies to see if it would actually work, and it worked again. And these are the results that they achieved. So when you do that and you teach on your origin story, and then you teach the vehicle part of the story, you teach the internal belief part of the story, and you teach the external belief part of your story, all of a sudden, what you've done is that you've hit every part of what they can try to challenge you on and say like, but that won't work for me. But that won't work for me. And what you're trying to do is you're teaching them by saying like, hey, it will work for you because I've got this framework that worked for me and it did this, and it's worked for other people that have done this, and it's going to be successful. And so this is really interesting. And I'm not going to go through the last piece because I know this other piece is going to be very challenging to kind of teach, and I might do this as a part 2, to be quite honest. You know what? I'll probably do this as a part 2 because there's more to this last piece. So the reason I teach essentially like this, like these webinars, is all I'm doing is I'm just teaching stories throughout the entire process, which is great. Like teaching stories is a really, really good way to really relate. But when I started using this framework at these franchise events, and I was doing them live, okay, and people were like glued to my presentation. They're like, I can't, like, I kid you not when I say this, like, we have a booth here and we found out that you were talking. I literally blocked out time to listen to your speaking, your speaking part. And I've had people literally glued to my presentation. They say at the end of the presentation, they're like, I basically think that I need to have a vehicle rep because you convinced me that I need a vehicle rep in order to grow my business because no other form of marketing is going to work. And you might be thinking, well, Javier, did you talk about vehicle reps the entire time? I did not. I did not talk about vehicle reps the entire time. All I did was I explained the value behind it in different ways by using stories and examples and other people kind of getting, great business, and just explain that. Like what I'm trying to get to is that I use this same framework to sell wraps, and you can use this same framework to garner more not facility companies, but more companies that need facility services or more companies that need property management services, okay? And by using this framework, like it will work. Trust me on this, okay? And so, the second part of this is like what's called the stack and close. And I'm not going to go into that right now because we're already at like 20 some odd minutes. So what I want to do is I want to kind of iterate that this 4-part framework for, how you teach. You're not teaching them how to do it. You're giving them like a foundation or a framework of it. And you're kind of giving them like a teaser of the tactical piece of like, you need, here are some things that you need, but you're not diving into each one. You're not saying, okay, and then you're going to be doing this and then this and this. And because what happens, people get lost in the nitty gritty. That's what they're paying you for to do, is essentially how to execute those, like the hows. Okay, they're paying you to do that. The what's and the whys is what they're like, that's like what you're giving away for free, and then they pay you for the hows. Okay, so like bring up the what's and the whys. All right, and when you do that, people and teach them around that and give them value behind that, and make sure you teach something that's like, hey, this is really good. I want to be able to do the rest of this stuff. I need you to do the rest. People buy into that. All right, so hope you found this valuable. I'm going to teach a part 2. So if you're listening to this podcast, I'm going to be teaching a part 2 on called the Stack and Close framework. Okay, so again, my name is Javier with Facility Management Marketing Podcast, and if you can do 3 things for me, connect with me on LinkedIn. On linkedin.com/in/Javier Lozano Jr. DM this DM this podcast to somebody, share it in a text message or something like that, and then give us a 5-star review on Spotify and or on Apple Podcasts. Thanks a lot and have a great day.